Well, hey everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Man, it's been a while since I've done a live stream, and I think the past couple I've done have been with Eliza. So I know disappointing. You just have me tonight, but thanks everyone so much for being here tonight. Is about a couple things. First, it's about celebrating 25,000 subscribers, which honestly is really difficult for me to wrap my head around. I was in my dorm room just the other day packing up, and a friend of mine who watches the channel, if he's watching tonight, what's up, Dice K? He comes in, and I had YouTube Studio pulled up, and he said he saw like this subscriber count. He's like, that's a lot of people. Like, do you realize that? And honestly, it's tough for me to conceptualize, right? Because if you were in a church and it was growing so much, you'd see more people in the seats every week. Or if you were in a similar thing, you could see the growth. It's such an abstract concept for me, and it kind of messes with my head if I think about it too much. But I really do want to say I am so, so grateful for all of you. It is such a privilege to get to do this. It is such a joy to get to do this, and to get to meet so many of you, at least virtually, is so much fun. Getting to hear your stories is always such an honor to me. I love reading your emails, reading your comments. If you've been on the channel for a while, I do my best to respond to absolutely as many comments and emails as possible, because again, for me, it's such a privilege to do this. It's such a joy, and I'm just glad to be a part of this community with you all. So tonight's about celebrating you guys as well, because, well, obviously this channel wouldn't be where it is without you all. So thank you so much. Gosh, there's already so many comments. Hey to everyone. I really appreciate you being here. Something that's going to be helpful for tonight when you're asking questions is if you can start with like @Gospel Simplicity. That just makes it easier for me as I look through these. Now, I will say I'll be starting with a couple questions from my patrons, because those are the people who I really have to thank for the growth of this channel. They're also the people I have to thank for this fancy new light. Anyone notice no glare on the glasses? Come on, we're moving up into the world. We're almost acting like we know what we're doing here now. So I'm going to take a couple of their questions. I'll be taking your questions in just a second. But if you want to support the channel on Patreon, I should let you know that you can do so by going to patreon.com/gospel simplicity. Or guys, this is exciting stuff. Anyone see the new Gospel Simplicity website? That's right. Again, because of patrons, we have a Gospel Simplicity website now. You can go to gospelsimplicity.com and you can find it there. And you can also just make one-time donations there. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, to the questions. The first question is it's a good one. Not that others aren't. But this comes from a patron named Brian, and he asks, what are your thoughts on baptismal regeneration? So that's a big question. My thoughts on baptismal regeneration. I will say that's definitely something where my thoughts have been in development and probably changed recently. So growing up, I heard said so many times that baptism is an outward sign or an outward declaration of an inward decision to trust and follow Jesus. And it would be repeated quite frequently that there's nothing magical to baptism, that the water doesn't do anything. It's just you declaring what you've already decided. It's kind of perhaps a typical Baptistic view. That's what I grew up with. And honestly, I didn't really think to question that much for a long time until I started getting into church history, I'd say, and developing a more sacramental view of theology. I would also say in that time, my view of soteriology changed, thinking more about salvation in terms of union with Christ. And when that's your dominant soteriology, I think it's going to change your sacramentology, because then if salvation is about being joined to Jesus' body, that's going to change how you think about the Eucharist, right? You're going to think about the Eucharist as, some type of union with Jesus' body. And same with baptism. And then you begin to read verses like Romans 6:3-4, where we're baptized into Christ's death a little differently, a little more realistically. That's the word. So to answer that question, what are my thoughts on baptismal regeneration? I actually had to do this for a catechism question for a systematic theology class. So I'm going to give you my best answer to the question of what is a proper view of baptism. Is it a sacrament? Why should we practice baptism? This will be more succinct than my rambling. It says, baptism baptism is the normative sign of entrance into Christ's covenant community, in which people are immersed into the death of Christ and raised to life with him in the waters of baptism. Baptism is a sign of the fundamental reality of a believer's union with Christ, but it is not a mere sign or empty sign. Rather, baptism seals that which it signifies, and as such is the sacrament of the gospel. Baptism is not just recommended in Holy Scripture, it is commanded, and believers ought to follow out this command with joy and wonder at the amazing truth that through water, Christ offers us a sign and seal of our life in him. So it's basically like a sacramental view of what baptism is, that something actually happens there. Now, the question of baptism or regeneration, it gets into questions of like ex opere operandi and how exactly does it work. Honestly, I don't feel as comfortable answering that question. It's something I'm still thinking through. And I think there's interesting implications of kind of an Augustinian view of how the sacrament works there. But I would say I would definitely equate salvation and baptism quite closely. That was a really long answer to the first question. I'll be quicker with the next ones. But a great question. Another patron question is, what advice would you give a Protestant or any Christian who is questioning the teachings of the church of which they are a part of and love? That's a big question, so I'll take that. What should you do? I would say approach it humbly. I think sometimes we start to read outside of our tradition. We encounter people who are smart and have good ideas, and then we begin to bash our own tradition and say, everyone who comes from this tradition must be dumb. They haven't thought through these things. Now, while there may be people in your tradition who haven't thought through these things, chances are the architects of your tradition at least had thought through these things, and maybe if they didn't have the best answers to it, they at least had answers to it. So I think be charitable with your own tradition as you begin to maybe question it would be a big thing. Approach it humbly. You're not the first person to think about these things, and I think a theological humility is really important, generally speaking. And then do it communally. Sometimes these things are scary to do alone, and I think theology is done best in the context of the church. And so ask these questions to whatever extent you can with other people. That's been one of the great joys of my journey so far, is being able to kind of form this community at Moody. I don't know, like, if I should out them. I won't, I guess, by name. But these people who are asking these similar questions, because we're able to get lunch all the time or get dinner and ask these questions and wrestle through them and realize we're not the only ones asking them. And that's been a real comfort, real joy for me. So that would be my recommendation. What steps should individual Christians take to help the church to again be united? Pray. Someone said in here, can you suggest that people pray for unity? Absolutely. We should be praying for unity. Yes, that was Josue Inhan. Sorry if I probably butchered your name. But please also recommend people pray for unity. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to see unity, I think we should be praying for it. I think we should also be learning to speak the theological language of other traditions. So if you want to have meaningful dialogue, say between Protestants and Catholics, if you can't articulate the Catholic position well, the dialogue is going to break down, right? Because if you say, you believe that we should worship Mary, and you're not familiar with like the latria dulia distinction, well, that discussion's not going to go well, and vice versa. So learn to speak the language, pray, be charitable, and make friendships with people who aren't of your same tradition. I think that's a big part of ecumenism that's often forgotten, and I would recommend it highly. So and I should shout out, I'm so grateful for the friendships I've been able to make with faithful Catholics, faithful Orthodox, etc. Yeah. All right, other patron questions, and then we'll be getting to your questions real soon. Again, starting with the patron questions, and then I will be looking at your questions in a moment. Okay, what are your goals for your channel? This comes from a patron named Bethany, a new patron. My goals for the channel, the mission of the channel is help introduce people to and help them encounter the beautiful simplicity and transformative power of the gospel. Kind of like the subtext of that is bringing simplicity to theological complexity. Now, those are kind of like taglines, but what do those mean in actuality? Well, I hope that the channel does a couple of things. I hope that it can bring greater unity to the church, that we can have these conversations and we can understand where different people are coming from. I hope that the channel can be a place where people who have questions, who are trying to seek the truth of, what is the church Christ founded, or how do we make sense of the divisions in the church? I hope this is a place where people can come to get answers and hopefully come across some of the best answers in like a one-stop shop. It's kind of what has been the case for me, right? So I'm asking these questions personally, and I get to ask these questions to the people, but not everyone gets to do that. Not everyone has the ability, the access to these people, the time, whatever. And so I'm able to kind of embody maybe the questions that you have and also the questions that I have. And so I've said this before, but even if, say I decide on a certain tradition, but or whatever, like, you're going in that direction, I would keep doing what I'm doing because I think this is really important. I think people need a space for this, and I'm really happy to get to be that space. But I also hope that this is a place that helps people take the next step in their journey of following Jesus, not just thinking about Jesus, but living out a life of discipleship. I actually got to do an interview today with a Catholic friar, and interviews about like the spiritual life are actually my favorite interviews to do. I really enjoy theology. I enjoy the wrestling, the complex thoughts. I mean, my brain thrives in that. I like a challenge. I like reading thick textbooks, but I really like getting to talk with people who I think are further along in their journey of following Jesus than I am, and to get to hear wisdom from them. And so I hope that I can share that with people as well, and that would be helpful. Okay. Hopefully that's kind of an answer to that question. See, any other patron questions? Okay, this one's from Amanda, one of my longest running patrons. So grateful for Amanda and her family. And she says, how does your faith help you get through stressful situations? What are some tools, books, verses, etc. that you turn to when life feels like a lot? That's a great question, because certainly sometimes life does feel like a lot. To answer the first question, how does my faith help me get through tough situations? I want to first say that, to recognize that in the grand scheme of things, I haven't been through tough situations that a lot of people have been. And I've shared my story a little bit before, but I think the time of my life when I went through some of the hardest situations was a time when my faith was weakest, honestly. And so I like to think that those things would go a lot different now. But since I've really come back to the faith, I'm not sure I can say that I've gone through like super, super difficult times. We all have our struggles, and I don't want to, it's difficult making comparisons there, and I'm not sure it's necessarily healthy, but I don't want to say like, oh, I've been through so much, because I haven't. In a lot of ways, my life's been pretty easy, and so I want to recognize that. But when life feels like a lot, I can maybe talk about that a little more. What do I turn to? Well, something that has been super helpful for my life is the Jesus prayer. This is something I definitely turn to in those times. And she also asked, what are some verses that I turn to? I know this probably isn't like the right way to pray the Jesus prayer, but if you see like on this guy, so there, is this lagging? Hopefully it's okay. Okay. On those separators, I usually throw in a verse that I'm trying to memorize. But if I'm not trying to memorize like a new one, I generally default to, I believe it's 1 John 3:1. What great love the Father has lavished upon us, that we should be called children of God, for that is what you are. I find that verse to be such a calming verse, such a verse of comfort, and of a needed verse. Because I think so much of what we do flows out of who we think we are. And when you remind yourself that your fundamental identity, the greatest title I will ever have, will not be YouTuber, wouldn't be professor, or author, or husband, as great as many of those things would be, and I would love to be like all of them. The greatest title I'll ever have is child of God. And so I try to remember that. I try to remind myself. I try to live from that, especially in times that feel like a lot. And so I pray that on those separators. Is there something you're supposed to do with those separators? And is there a better name for them than separators? Anyway, that's what I do. But also different psalms, super helpful, praying the psalms. I really enjoy the Divine Office, Liturgy of the Hours. I actually listen to it at the gym a lot, but starting and ending my day that way, I usually can't do all 7. I shouldn't say can't. I don't prioritize my time in that way, but I find that helpful. Other things, just good community, things I lean on, finding people that care about you, talking through them. Then like non-spiritual things, if you will. I don't really like that divide. But as far as tools for when life feels like a lot, like get outside, get moving, do something. Eliza's really good at reminding me of that, because I can definitely be a person that just wants to go, go, go. And like right now, taking a bunch of Latin, I have 5 interviews this week. She's been like reminding me like, hey, have you just sat outside today? Because you need to do that with no screens and just sit for a little bit. And so things like that. But okay, I think I'm almost to the end of my patron. That is the last patron question I have. So I will be going through your questions now. Give me a second because I haven't been paying that much attention to them. I'm sorry, but I will now. I see a lot of people in the chat. Hallie, one of my mods, thank you so much. Hallie, you're a saint. I saw you were modding Michael Lofton's channel yesterday on that video about Taylor Marshall. I only stopped by for a second, but I can only imagine that must have been a real adventure. Mod of the year. Okay. This is from xpicto777x. Hey, Austin, how have your Protestant friends reacted to your interest in Orthodoxy? It's interesting. You asked specifically about Orthodoxy. I feel like Protestants, generally speaking, have less baggage with Orthodoxy because they're less familiar with it. So maybe my interest in Orthodoxy is less scary than an interest in Catholicism, I'd say, generally speaking. But if I can speak to both of them, because it's hard to kind of pinpoint them because I'm kind of looking at them at the same time, it's definitely varied. Like I said at the beginning of this, I've formed a community of people at Moody who are passionate about these things as well. And they've really responded with a lot of encouragement and been there on the days when I'm like, I hate this. Why did I ever start asking these questions? I know I don't talk about that a lot on YouTube, but there's definitely those days where I'm like, this would have been so much better had I just lived in blissful ignorance. But I press on anyway because I do think these are important questions, and I don't know that I could stop asking them at this point. But there's people that react with concern, confusion, indifference. It really kind of runs the gamut, as they say. Great question, though. xpixtus777x. Okay, let's look for some more questions. Dustin Neely. Dustin Neely, supporter of this channel, often around in the comments. So grateful for you and your contribution to this channel. Really glad to have you as a part of this community, Dustin. Dustin Neely asks, have you considered going on a pilgrimage retreat to an Orthodox monastery? The answer is yes. I would really like to. And I've kind of actually started exploring what that might look like. I want to make sure I'm using the terms here right, because I'm not sure what I've looked at as technically a pilgrimage. I don't know if it would count or not. I really enjoyed getting to meet Father Seraphim Aldea, and he invited me to come out to Mo Monastery out there in the Hebrides, and that would be really interesting. Eliza and I have actually talked about that. There's also a monastery in West Virginia, Wheeling, West Virginia, pretty far away, but I was driving past the exit just the other day. I was thinking I'd really like to visit that. But St. Tikhon's actually isn't too far away, and that would probably be more doable. But I think that would be a really helpful experience, and that's probably the most attractive side to Orthodoxy to me is the spiritual life. And the theology too. There's elements of internet orthodoxy that I find unattractive, and it's not worth getting into that right now. And there's some kind of like ecclesiastical things that are difficult, but the spiritual life, I mean, the Jesus prayer, the monastic life, there's so much depth there. And yeah, I'd love to do that. If you have recommendations of where to go, let me know. Oh, Bonnie says she's been to Mull Monastery. That's cool. How was that? Okay. Jonathan, I'm not going to try your last name. Can we look forward to more discussions with Dr. Gavin Ortland and Joe Heschmeyer? I loved, in all caps, their papacy discussion and learned a lot. I was actually thinking about this morning, and I'm often in conversation with Keith. We were texting right before this. I think we might be able to expect more. We have another one planned. We don't have a date for it. We picked the topic right after we did the last one, which was on the papacy. And after that, we weren't able to schedule something quickly. Keith's wife was pregnant. Joe was getting ready to switch jobs. He just got a job at Catholic Answer. Super excited for him. With that, he's going to do a great job there. And Gavin was busy with, I think, some research stuff. The man's always writing books and doing things. But yes, we're hoping to do another. And we were talking about the nature of the church, I think, visible, invisible. We'll see what that is, but we're hoping to. We haven't talked about it in a bit, though. So thanks for the reminder. Okay. I don't know how to say your name. Jati Baleos. I'm sorry. Hi, Austin. My question is, how do I know that I'm ready to enter a relationship? Wow, great question. I'm glad that you're even asking the question, because I think oftentimes we don't think of that, and it's just, well, I'm going to be in a relationship because other people are in a relationship, and relationships sound fun, and I'd like to be in a relationship. A relationship would make me feel good, so I'm going to be in a relationship. And that's essentially, I think, the thought process for a lot of people, and I don't think that's the healthiest way to go about it. I also don't want to put such a high bar on this that it's something that's never attainable, because I think when I hear some people talk about, don't get into a relationship until you're at X point, or, only get into a relationship with someone who fulfills all these categories. Sometimes I'm like, only like Jesus fulfills those categories. So I'm going to try to maybe balance those two things. How do you know when you're ready to be in a relationship? Well, I think phase of life, right? So I really think, generally speaking, that relationships should have a telos, right? Like what's the end goal for your relationship? Now, I'm not saying you can't go on a date with someone if you're not planning your wedding with them already. I think that's setting yourself up for failure. I think it's too high of expectations. But how do you know that you're ready? I think, generally speaking, that you're not looking for a relationship so that it fills some void in you. You're not looking for someone to complete you, if you will, or you're not looking for someone to provide your happiness or your spiritual growth or direction. Like that you are fully like following after Jesus. And if you find someone who's also doing that and you realize, hey, we could run this together, I think that's a really great way of looking at that. But then, I mean, there's also, like what phase of life are you in? Sometimes that might not make sense because of what your life looks like. Do you have the margin to really be giving of yourself to someone else? Because that's really what a relationship is about, desiring their best and putting them before yourself in those ways. So complicated answer, but hopefully helpful. Dustin Neely, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Christ is risen. There's a proper response to this, isn't there? Is it indeed he is risen, or truly he is risen? I probably butchered it, but thank you so much. Okay, questions are rolling in. These are so fun. I love doing this. You guys want to do more of these? I enjoy this. Adeodatus. Sounds Latin. Have you read Theology of the Body by St. John Paul II? I have not read Theology of the Body by St. John Paul II. I would like to, but honestly, it's like 700 pages. I'm taking 9 credits of Latin this summer, and I don't think I'm going to get through it, but I am very interested in reading through some more abridged versions, or Love and Responsibility. That book really piques my interest. Theology of the Body, generally speaking, is intriguing to me, but no, I haven't read it, is the short answer. I'd love to, though. Ooh, good question by Sherry Wickens. She says, has your opinion of Catholicism been affected by some of the infighting and YouTube wars? As someone who is outside of the church, what is your view of the controversies? Wow, spicy. So has my view of Catholicism been shaped by some of the infighting and YouTube wars? I mean, I think yes. I think it's hard to say that it hasn't, right? I want to say that it's not the primary thing, that I'm looking at these things objectively, though I think we sometimes overplay our objectivity. But yeah, I find those things off-putting. I find some of the back and forth. These things exist on both sides, though, and people tearing down their own tradition. I find that unappealing. Sometimes I would just want to ask people, like, if the church is as bad or half as bad as you say it is, why would anyone join it? So yeah, I've been put off by it, but I don't think to the extent that it, discounts an entire church. I don't think you want to judge a denomination, a tradition, etc., just by its members, because all of them are full of fallen people who are going to kind of betray the beauty and the best parts of that tradition. But what is my view of the controversies? I honestly don't know enough to speak on this intelligently. I'd hate to wade too far into it. The controversies, I assume you mean things with like Pope Francis and like different theories on Masonic infiltration and whatnot. I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm generally very wary of conspiracy theories, and that's something that kind of throws me off of some online Orthodox discussion. But I don't think that, discounts Catholicism or Orthodoxy. That's just more saying something about me. But generally shy away from things like that. Okay. Wow, so many questions coming through. And I think there were some more super chats. Catherine, thank you so much for your super chat. Really appreciate that. There was another one in here. I don't know what that means, but thank you so much. Jean. I got the response to Christ is risen. Correct. Glad to hear that. Oh, interesting. Who's your favorite female saint? If you have one, love your channel, by the way. Thank you, Sophia. My favorite female saint, honestly, I'm not well versed in the saints. I find Mother Teresa, she's not a saint yet. This is showing you how much I know. I really want to read more about Saint Teresa of Lisieux and Avila. I'm really bad with these. Sorry. Who's the one with the little way? I want to read that. But I'm just not that good. I also have a lot of respect for that. I'm doing so poorly here. Who's the one that told the Pope, go back to Rome? She's cool. I respect that. Honestly, yeah. Growing up as a Protestant, we don't hear about these people. And it's only now that I'm trying to get into them. I'm really interested in the medieval period in general. Doing some research on Bonaventure right now. He's not female, I know. But I find that period really interesting. So sorry. Hopefully I can give a better answer to that one day. More questions. Oh, interesting. Okay. Axe Apologist, another person who's been faithfully engaging with this channel for a long time and leaves some of the most substantive comments on YouTube. And I recently found out that you create content as well, so you guys should check out Axe Apologist's channel. If you were set in charge of a youth ministry program, what would it look like? And so, well, I guess I'll start with that question. I mean, if I was set in charge of one, I guess it would be in a Protestant setting. It's interesting. I have a little bit of experience with youth ministry. It's the first place that I ever got the opportunity to preach and kind of fell in love with teaching in general. I think relationships are the biggest thing. There's statistics out there about the retention of young people in church, and that one of the key contributing factors to people staying in church is multi-generational or cross-generational relationships. Meaning that young people in the church who have strong relationships with people in the church of a generation different than their own, so that they have a strong relationship with older people in the church, are much, much more likely to stay in the church. And so that's why I think practical life-on-life discipleship with solid followers of Jesus is really important. Now, I struggle with some youth ministry approaches because of just my disposition. So a lot of youth ministries growing up were very much dodgeball centric, or games, or those eating shove as many marshmallows in your mouth as you can because it's fun and whatnot. That's just not my disposition. I would much rather have a youth leader who's hey, we can get coffee and hang out and talk, or things like that. But that says more about me than I think what's truly effective. So I think, you don't want to just make your ministry look like yourself, but I'm not that high energy of a person. And so my youth ministry might not look that high energy. But I would want it to be a place where people really felt comfortable. I think teenagers in general are some of the angstiest people I know. Having been a teenager only a couple of years ago, I get that. There's so much going on. There's so much insecurity. And if you could have a place where you genuinely felt like you could just be yourself, and that there were people who were there to listen, and that cared about you and wanted your best, and were going to go through life with you, and had that kind of unconditional positive regard for you, I think that goes a long way. And I would want to be showing teenagers what it looks like to follow Jesus in a real way, not in hey, everything's going to be great and easy, but hey, sometimes life is hard, and sometimes you might have doubts, and sometimes it's you might not enjoy this, and to be real about that. This is such a great question. I'd love to say more, but let's see the next. What virtues do you hope to grow in to be ready for marriage? Ooh, all of them. Faith, hope, love, charity. But no, if I could really focus on one thing, that's so hard. What virtues do you hope to grow in to be ready for marriage? I would say Eliza and I were having a conversation about this the other day. I think I do a good job of listening in person, but being long distance, something I've struggled with is listening over the phone and things like that. That's something I'm really trying to work on. Something else I'm trying to work on, which we had a discussion about the other night in the car, is how to encourage well. So generally speaking, I'm very much like, I guess you could say soft in a way, but like I want to be emotionally there for someone. I want to encourage them, very empathetic. But something I'm not always good at is like encouraging, like giving that push of like, hey, I know you can do this. Like, how can I help push you in this in a way that feels supportive and not just like, oh, you got this. So that's something I'm working on and trying to do better with. But there's so much. I mean, just all of them, really. I want to be the best me I can be for her. Great questions. Wow, I'm really enjoying these. There was a super chat. I want to make sure to get to that. People were giving me answers. Okay, St. Catherine of Siena, St. Therese, the Little Flower. Thank you so much, Hallie. St. Therese of Lisieux, the Little Way. You guys are awesome. Where was this super chat? Did I make this up? Was this in my mind? Super chat. Wow, Alexander, thank you so much. What did you say? If you were to convert to Catholicism, do you think your fiance would follow you? Great question. I would say probably, yeah. We've talked about it. I'm not sure it would be like a right away thing. Like if I did it, she would just do it. But I think it would, what she said before is, I know you would look into it thoroughly. And if you were convinced of it, it would really make me think, hey, there's probably something here. She's been looking into it a little more. We plan on looking into just these questions generally more this summer. But I don't want to speak for her beyond what I can say for sure. But I would think yes, but not in an automatic sense. Great question, Alexander. Really appreciate that. All right, other questions. Another super chat. You guys are being so generous today. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. Okay, from James McPherson. Why do you think high church traditional Protestantism has been so heavily influenced by liberalism and politics? Oh man. Wow, what a great question. A question I will be stretching myself to answer. This is tough. So I think some of it has to do with the educational systems, but that might not be getting to the root of the question. So, I mean, really, in like the 17th, 18th century, you've got Friedrich Schleiermacher, who's known as the father of Protestant liberalism, influenced by Immanuel Kant as well. We kind of have this theological agnosticism, right, between the pneumatological the pneumatological and the phenomenological, right? So that we can't really make certain claims about God or the supernatural, not saying they don't exist, but that begins to introduce a change into Schleiermacher's theology as more of a ground up rather than a God down theology, right? A more man-centered theology as God consciousness. And I think that the high church traditional Protestant churches had a high value on education, whereas some of the lower church models, and that education was being influenced by the German school of theological liberalism out of Schleiermacher and his heirs like Harnack and others. Whereas, say, some other denominations, especially more like evangelicalism, etc., had less of an emphasis on formal theological education, and so there wasn't as much of an influence out of those things. Lower church traditions also really come out of like the revival eras. You've got the Wesleys, and you've got George Whitefield and others in there. I'm blanking on Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, who was that, and Jonathan Edwards. So you kind of have like a pietism, revivalism that births a lot of the lower church movements that have really shaped American Protestantism, and generally had less of an emphasis on the higher criticism and higher theological learning. And so I think that's part of it. The DNA of revivalism. Man, what a fun question. These are fun things to talk about. That's my best attempt at it. Okay, more questions. Um, oh, someone just noticed a comment I made today. Did you find the contact for Father Spiridon Bailey? I just came from the video. I have not found it yet. I got a little sidetracked. Actually, I was sidetracked watching that video. What I should have been doing was my Latin homework. And then I went back to my Latin homework after not seeing the email right away. So if someone has it, you can pass it along to me. But no, I did not find it. Okay. Hey, Austin, what's your deadlift? Not enough. I actually don't do a lot of deadlifting. I do a lot of like calisthenics stuff, bodyweight stuff, etc. But I'm not that strong. Melissa Doherty in her channel speaks a lot on this. I don't know what this is. Protestant liberalism? I don't know, but cool. I'm not familiar with her. I'll have to check her out. All right. Questions. Okay, great question. Maria H says, is there any belief that you had before that you have since changed your mind on, at least for now? I would say the Eucharist would be a big one. Baptism, another one. I kind of articulate that a little bit, although my views on that have been equally probably shaped by investigations into Catholicism and Orthodoxy as by a very impactful professor on my life, Dr. Marcus Peter Johnson, who is an Anglican and wrote the wonderful book. Well, he's written several books, but he wrote the wonderful book, One with Christ, which really grounds soteriology in union with Christ. And when, again, you have a more realist sense of salvation as not being like an abstract gift given to you by God in exchange for a profession of faith, but in fact, faith being that which grasps God so that you are, or grasps Christ, so that salvation is fundamentally being joined to Christ, then that's going to change your view of the sacraments. And that is a big part of that. So big shout out to him. Really grateful. Another super chat. Okay, Chamber. Whoa, that's a cool little, what do you call it? Not avatar. What am I like? What do you call these? Profile pictures? I should know these things. Okay. Gospel Simplicity. What are your thoughts on Mike Winger and his videos on Catholicism? Do you think he brings up any good points? I'll be honest. I haven't like seen all of them. I know I have friends who have strong opinions on them. What I want to say is my general impression of Mike Winger is that he's very sincere, and I think overall is doing good work, in spreading the gospel and promoting biblical literacy. I'm not sure Catholicism is his strongest area. I don't necessarily, from some of the pushback I've seen, I don't necessarily get the impression that he's being the most charitable with the thinking, but honestly, I'm not versed in enough. I don't want to say too much. But yeah, Mike, I don't like dichotomizing these too much between like biblical studies and systematic theology or like dogmatic theology, but he definitely seems to be doing the former a lot more, like exegetical work, but not necessarily informed by the tradition of the church as much, which I think can be dangerous. And yeah, but it's a channel I used to watch back in the day before I got into these things. I don't really watch it now. These are great questions, but yeah, I want to be careful there. Okay, more super chats. Gosh, you guys are just so generous. I'm so grateful for all of you. Okay, Ray, the guy who asked me about my deadlift, says, you're more than the guy that asked me about my deadlift. I shouldn't just characterize you as that. As an Orthodox Christian, I would love to know what you really love about Christian Orthodoxy. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But, well, you have it capitalized. So I'm going to assume what you mean by Christian Orthodoxy is what are commonly referred to as Eastern Orthodox churches or Orthodox Christian churches under like the patriarchates and whatnot. So I'm going to answer it as that. What I love about like lowercase Christian Orthodoxy is I think it's beautiful, true, and the best explanation of human life experience and what God is doing. But I don't think that's what you're asking. What do I love about Orthodoxy specifically? Would be a lot of things. I mentioned this a little earlier, but the spiritual life, again, the Jesus prayer, like getting to have conversations with people like Frederica Matthews Green, who like exudes love for Jesus. I love that. The Way of the Pilgrim has been a super impactful book on my life. I also like the Orthodox approach to theology. So the theologian is the one who prays. What was that? Evagrius of Pontius. The liturgy's beautiful. And yeah, those are some of the things. Great question, Ray. And thank you for the super chat. I think there might have, was there an, okay, no, I got all the super chats. So, also, does anyone power lift? I don't. Some people might. This guy looks like he might power lift. Okay, this is a good question. Sean Szymanski. Do you go to a Protestant service before or after you visit an apostolic liturgy, or do you just go to one on Sunday? Usually, if I'm going to like a Catholic or Orthodox church, it's an addition to a Protestant service. For instance, I go to St. John Cantius, a Catholic church, a decent amount, but I go to their 5 p.m. service on Sunday nights. One of the best practices for me of my time in college has been taking like a Sabbath on Sundays. And I'm not saying this as like we need to follow the Jewish observance of the Sabbath, but just like for my own mental health and sanity, taking a day off of school and work, generally speaking, on Sunday has been really good for me, which also means I have a lot of free time on Sunday. And so I'll often find myself over at Cantius. It's a little harder to go just because of the time for an Orthodox service, because they're only in the morning and I have other Sunday morning commitments. But yeah. All right. I think someone said, oh, we got a super chat. All right. Hutton Moon. What are some, I'm going to try to make these like smaller. Can I do that? Or whatever. Okay. What are some of your biggest hurdles when considering Catholicism or Orthodoxy from a Protestant perspective? I assume you mean theologically, because there are just like personal life things, right? I mean, I have a lot tied up in being Protestant, and I think we're, generally speaking, as humans, hesitant to change, but I don't think that's necessarily the formal cause of my hesitancy. But the biggest hurdles, theologically speaking, I would say probably justification. In some ways, justification. For Catholicism, still the Marian dogmas and the papal infallibility. Wow, thoughts are hard. Yeah, I struggle with that. And then, like, seeing a lack of vibrance. This is less of a theological thing, more of a issue of the heart, maybe, than the head, you could say. But I've grown up in really dynamic evangelical churches where it's like we're going to do everything we can to introduce people to Jesus, and I love that. I really love that. And so sometimes when I see Catholic or Orthodox circles that seem very nominal, I want to be careful to say, of course, there are very many nominal Protestants as well. I'm aware. I'm just saying, in my experience growing up in like kind of the non-denominational evangelical megachurch world, that wasn't as much the case, and so I struggle with seeing that. I'm sure there's other things, but those are some of them. Chamberlain said, thanks for saying my profile pic was cool. I made it in 10 minutes. Well, you're a talented man. Or woman. What was it? Chamberlain? Yeah. All right. You could always go to Saturday night Vespers. That's a good idea, Dustin. Thank you for that. Here's a struggle right now. So in Chicago, there's Orthodox churches everywhere and Catholic churches et cetera. And it's really easy. In fact, there's 2 Orthodox churches on the same block, or like within a couple blocks of where I live in Chicago. I'm back home in Maryland, and we live in a very small town on the Chesapeake Bay on the Eastern Shore. And I think the closest Orthodox church to me is like an hour, 15 minutes away. So I've been wanting to take Eliza to an Orthodox service, and I'm trying to figure that out. Here's a prompt for my Orthodox people in the chat down below. If I take Eliza to an Orthodox church, what's the word for this? Oh, anyway, should it be like OCA, Greek Orthodox, ROCOR, etc.? What would you recommend? I'm really interested in what you would say. Okay, back to questions. Ooh, great question from Elisa, or maybe Eliza. Not the way she's not mine, but my fiance, not the way she spells it, but your name might be Elisa or Eliza. Anyway, not really that important right now. What would you recommend when talking to friends with different beliefs? Listening. Okay, there's a bit more to it than that, but honestly, that's like the biggest part of it is listening. Listen to understand, not to rebut. And I think that is a huge part of it. I think another really, really important thing that like I would love to do multiple videos on is the way, the dispositions of going into these things, right? And so we want to assume that these the beliefs this person has makes sense to them. And I know that doesn't sound groundbreaking, but we often assume that people are just holding these views that make no sense to us and therefore they must make no sense to them. Now, I'm not saying all views are equal, but I'm saying that in light of how this person understands the world we live in, these beliefs make sense to them. And so let's try to inhabit their worldview, the old put yourself in their shoes, and see, okay, given the way they understand the world, why is it that these beliefs make sense to them? Now, I think our understandings of reality, again, aren't all equal. Some understandings of reality align with reality better. And that's kind of what seeking truth is, right? Finding that which aligns with reality as revealed by God. Because Jesus is the Logos, the one in whom all things cohere. So, but yeah, I think we do want to understand where people are coming from, get to know them, ask good questions, listen, all those things. Really appreciate that question. Okay, was there a super chat that came in? No, I got the last super chat. Okay. Oh, I missed a super chat? Hutton Moon says, oh, where did I miss a super chat? I don't want to miss a super chat. Let me go back. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. I don't know your name. Another kind of cool profile picture. From your studies of the early church, do you believe the Catholic Orthodox Church are the true continuation of the original church? Depends on what you mean by that. So there would be a lot of nuance in this answer, and I don't want to endlessly nuance it. Do I believe that the Catholic... So I guess you're saying, like, because you lumped Catholic Orthodox Church together, or maybe you ran out of characters, and so you did it that way. Okay. As far as distinguishing between which one would be the true claimant of the original church, I think is a really difficult question. The short answer is if I knew the answer to this, I would be in one of those churches, right? If I felt strongly about that answer. But Calvin makes this distinction between apostolic succession of doctrine and apostolic succession of office, which is an interesting distinction to make. I'm not sure how valid it is, but it's something worth thinking about. And so there's the question of, do these churches have valid apostolic succession of office? Difficult to trace and substantiate, but for the most part, it seems like there is some type of apostolic succession of office, even though we really can't confirm that, but there's, a large handing down. But apostolic succession of doctrine, as in, do they hold the same doctrine that the apostles held? It's the question I'm trying to answer. Hopefully I will someday. Okay, I think there was another super chat. You guys are so nice. Alexander, again. Alexander, you just sent me books. This is like the second super chat you've sent in. You're so nice. What's your view on Catholic natural family planning versus Protestant views? Protestants aren't monolithic, but I'm assuming what you mean by Protestant views is that birth control is okay. I'm going to get myself in trouble here because I'm going to be speaking out of my knowledge because it's not something that I've researched that much, so I want to be careful. Catholic views on natural family planning. I respect the continuity of the view. I do sometimes struggle. This might get me in trouble. I know there's videos on this. I know there's things out there. I guess I get it. Sometimes I struggle to see how natural family planning isn't just like a workaround for birth control, like that it's not just Catholic approved birth control. No, no, I say that I'm not trying to like take one of the few options for family planning off the table for Catholics, not at all. Because I do think that the Catholic moral theology in the area of reproduction is quite stringent, and it's not something I grew up with, so it's foreign to me, right? And it's difficult to think about. I think that there are times in church history where we see somewhat of like a Gnostic influence of thinking that the body is bad and thinking that therefore sex is bad, and I don't think that's good. I'm not saying Catholic views on this are a remnant of that, but I do think it's something to be wary of. I think there's at times beauty in it, but I think also at times it can be used oppressively. I don't know enough about this. That's my best attempt at an answer. There's way smarter people on this, and I'm actually trying to get someone on to talk about theology of the body. I emailed Christopher West or filled out his contact form, but I haven't heard back. If anyone has his email, feel free to send it to me. Wow. Javier Lopez Garcia, thank you so much for the super chat. Have you considered having authors, theologians from the Spanish-speaking world? I'm sure many speak English. This might be unexplored market. I have some extra characters, so hi and love your stuff. The short answer is yes, I would love to. I actually, Okay, here's something I struggle with. Balancing what I think people want to see and what I think, what I'm interested in, right? Because it's a bit of a give and take. I would love to explore the theology from people whose theology I don't necessarily think is maybe good at times, but I think at least needs to be heard in a charitable way. In fact, I'm sitting on an interview that I did a while ago with a progressive Christian where I just don't know whether to put it out or not because I know it'll have a lot of backlash, but I also don't feel like maybe I push back as much as I should have, but then again, I don't push back on guests. I've really struggled with it. All that intro to say, I've thought about trying to interview some like Latin American liberation theologians, not because I think liberation theology is necessarily great theology, but it's something I don't know a lot about, and I think the best way to learn about things is to ask people who are smart. But I do also recognize there's some stewardship of not exposing people to really bad things. I don't know. But anyway, as far as just like good Orthodox theology from the Spanish-speaking world, I would love to. In fact, when I graduated high school, I was certified as like biliterate, took as many Spanish classes as I could. I often watch Netflix in Spanish to keep my vocabulary up. I would love to be at a point one day where I could interview in Spanish. That would be phenomenal. But yes, so really long answer to your question. I think that would be fun. If you have people in mind, let me know. I would really love to know because I'm just not that familiar. Okay. Long answer over. Hallie says nuance and distinctions and nuance. Didn't Reason Theology just come out with like a mug that says like something about nuance? Something. Anyway. We get this all the time. You and your fiance look like siblings. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. We're definitely not. Yeah. Okay, there are some super chats. I need to get to those, but there's some interesting questions that aren't in here. Okay. Who would you pick as your favorite church father and favorite contemporary theologian, pastor, Christian writer, and why? Great question, and thanks for the super chat. My favorite church father. I have a special place in my heart for Athanasius because On the Incarnation was really the first patristic text that I read, so I really enjoy him for that. Chrysostom writes beautifully. Augustine's challenging. At times I like him, at times I don't. My favorite fathers. Yeah, I'm going to go with Athanasius. I love his story, kind of Athanasius contra mundum, right? And his fight for orthodoxy, his Trinitarian theology is good. I really like the Cappadocians, though, too. They're fascinating, even though really difficult to read. But I'll go with Athanasius for my favorite church father. And then favorite contemporary theologian, pastor, Christian writer, and why? One of the most influential contemporary, well, he's gone to rest in the Lord, but he's somewhat contemporary, would be T.F. Torrance. He's Reformed-ish theologian, but has a huge centrality of union with Christ in his theology. He wrote these great books, Incarnation and Atonement. They've been really influential in me. For me, if you read any of my academic papers, you're going to see a lot of footnotes from Torrance. Also because I've generally written papers in the area of Christology, and I think he's really good on Christology, which is also why I've read Athanasius for papers on Christology. But yeah, I like him because of that. I gave him a shout out earlier, but Marcus Peter Johnson, I took Systematic Theology 1 and 2 with him in his theology, his book 1 with Christ. He's actually the one that introduced me to Torrance, but his book 1 with Christ is probably one of the most influential theology books in my life. And so I'm deeply indebted to him for that. Outside of that, Tim Mackey, it's no secret. If you saw my interview with him, I'm a huge fan of him. You didn't ask, but my favorite Catholic writer would probably be Yves Congar. His book, The Meaning of Tradition, I think is masterful. I actually shouldn't say he's my favorite because that's the only full-length book I've read by him, but I think that book is masterful. And so I really appreciate that. Great question. Okay, was there another super chat? Wow, you guys. Okay, James Cortides or Cortides says, are you familiar with Stephen Young's new book, The Religion of the Apostles? How about Jonathan Pageau's The Symbolic World work? If so, thoughts? Interesting you bring this up. I was just thinking this morning I need to find Father Stephen DeYoung's email because I want to have him on the show because I've been listening to Lord of the Spirits and I think his work is really interesting and I think we could have a really fun conversation. But I have not read his book and I actually wasn't familiar with it either, so thanks. How about Jonathan Pageau? Jonathan Pageau, not to spoil any good surprise, but him and I will be doing an interview the first week in June, Lord willing. And so I wouldn't be doing that interview if I didn't find his work interesting. And yeah, we'll be talking about iconography and art, symbolism, some really fun things. Yeah, I think his work's really interesting. Okay. Everyone's saying do it. I appreciate you. I did put a disclaimer in front of the video. Maybe I'll do it. You guys won't like what this person has to say. You really won't like what they have to say. I can tell you that much. Oh, I'm so sorry that all these people are banning you, Dustin. I found you to be such a great commenter on my channel. I don't really ban anyone, to be honest, though. So, I will say, though, if anyone wants to know, I don't delete comments, hardly ever. Unless you're like cursing or something, but YouTube picks those up. And if you're spamming, I don't block. I just sometimes will flag a comment. But if you say anything mean to Eliza, your comment will be deleted and I won't apologize for it. So everyone knows the policy. Capiche? Capiche. But you can be mean to me. I'd prefer you didn't, but be mean to Eliza and your comment will be deleted swiftly. You like that Matt Fradd? Matt Fradd's great. I like Matt Fradd too. He's been super helpful to me. Okay, so lots of great comments in here. There, I see some reactions from my comments on birth control, and I wish I could read through all of these right now. Have I read the Didache? I have read the Didache. I've read pretty much all the works of the Apostolic Fathers of that period. I have a video on that. It sounds more impressive than it is. The Apostolic period's pretty short. There's not that much writing there. It would be awesome if you could have Dr. David Anders on. My good friend Keith Little has been trying to have him on, and he said he would be so mad if I got him on before him, so challenge accepted. Would love to have you on my podcast. Down, ? Go to gospelsimplicity.com/contact. Fill out the form there, and there's a couple prompts of like what you'd want to do, but I probably would be the answer. I rarely turn down podcasts, even if they're very small. So the answer is probably. Alexander, holy cow, you have, that's not really a good saying, but you've been so generous. Wow. Moody is a pretty hardcore Protestant school. What triggered your interest in the Catholic Church? Was it your visit to Mass? Hardcore Protestant. I suppose that's fair enough. That was years ago. And then like a year or two after it, I thought, hey, I'll make a video about that because there's a lot of division in the church, a lot of division in the country at that time. And I was just kind of making a call for unity, didn't think much of it. That video blew up, and it introduced me to a lot of really smart Catholics, which I hadn't ever come across before. They all told me to go to a mass. And then I went to a mass. That video blew up. I came across even more smart Catholics. A lot of them started sending me books. And then people started inviting me on podcasts. And I realized, oh, wow, there's a lot I don't know. And not anytime, but when there's things I don't know in a subject I'm interested in, I just try to read as much as I can about it. And so that's kind of the journey there. But the mass was a big part of it. St. John Cantius. The fact that that was my first mass was really interesting. Definitely impactful. And then getting to know Father Joshua, him and I have been out for tea a couple times. I really appreciate him and the videos we've done together and getting to know him and the people at Cantius. So that triggered my interest, I guess. Wow, we've already been going for an hour. I can't believe that. Cannot believe it. I don't have like a hard cutoff, but I do have some more Latin homework I should do at some point tonight. All right. Someone said, by the way, I went to St. Peter's in the Loop today. Very cool. I haven't been there, but love Chicago. Have to check it out sometime. Hallie, my faithful moderator, the internet's best moderator, said, read Theology of the Body or a synopsis. You will understand NFP better. I bet that's true. Yeah, because I honestly don't understand it that well, which is why I said I do want to be careful to not speak outside of my realm. So thanks for that. I will try to do that. Questions. They said at Divine Simplicity. Is that someone in the chat, or did you mean Gospel Simplicity? Anyway, at Divine Simplicity, should we pursue unity over truth or truth over unity? We should pursue unity in the truth. We should pursue both. All right. Email Jason Everett or Cameron Frad about NFP. Okay. I heard good things about Jason Everett's book. I was actually thinking about texting Matt. He made a comment about how, because Eliza was asking about theology of the body, and he made a comment about how his wife came across it and really made an impact, and I was going to ask what it was that she came across. Yeah, maybe Matt and I could, I don't know, be fun to go out there one day. Anyway, introduce Eliza. Father Josiah Trenham is pro NFP. Cool. He also has 10 kids. 10 kids! It's crazy. All right. Questions. No, please don't. Please don't interview him. Who shouldn't I interview? I forget who I said I was going to interview. I don't know. But if Hallie says no. Ooh, someone asked me this on Keith Nestor's channel the other day. What are your thoughts on penal substitutionary atonement? The quick answer I gave on Nestor's channel, words are getting hard, was that I think in atonement, we want to hold together two things. We want to hold together substitution and participation, right? So Christ died a death that we can't die. He is, the sacrificial lamb dying in our place. That's the substitutionary aspect. But it's also participatory, which is kind of the mystery and wonder of the atonement, right? That he died a death we couldn't die, but in him we participate in that death. I cited Romans 6 earlier that we've been baptized into his death. Galatians 2:20 talks about we have been crucified with Christ. We have died in Christ and raised in Christ, and that's kind of like the logic of salvation there. So I think we want to have participation and substitution in our theology, but I don't... I think the penal aspect, unless really carefully nuanced, can lead to really deep Trinitarian problems in which we're kind of pegging the Father against the Son. And I think that can be really problematic, but sometimes that's a caricature of the view. But that's a quick answer to it. Super chat from Noah Johnson. Austin, your channel is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to Christianity. It's my pleasure. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is. Truly, he is risen. Have you tried Western Rite Orthodoxy? No. If you have a Western Rite Orthodox church that you'd recommend in the greater Maryland region, let me know. But I have not. Hallie said, if you convert, change your name to Divine Simplicity. You know, people have asked me that if I converted to Catholicism or Orthodoxy, would I change my name, my channel name? And the answer would be no, because I would think I would think it would be bad if you were converting and you thought that somehow downplayed the emphasis of the gospel. Now, I know it can be used as like a evangelically sounding word, but like I would want to keep that centrality. So go to Steubenville. I want to go to Steubenville. In fact, I drive past it every time I go to Chicago. And Matt and I have talked a little bit about doing something, but I really want to stop by there one day. And there's also another thing in the works that if I hit 150 patrons, I've said that I will do a church tour road trip in which I tour different churches about every day. And Steubenville would definitely be on the list. I think that could be really fun. We're about halfway there. Kyle James asked, what are your thoughts on religious life, living in vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience? Just had an interview today where we talked about some of this with Father Mark Mary Ames of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. But my quick answer would be, I think it's commendable. I think Protestantism lost something when it kind of so downplayed it that it got rid of the monastic life and kind of the consecrated religious life. I think, you can maybe have an unhealthy view of it where it creates like this two-tier system where there's these people that can achieve a certain level of spiritual growth, and then, us lay people. I think that can be unhelpful. But I don't think it's a bad thing to take vows. So yeah, I figured you were kidding, Hallie. It just was an opportunity to bring that up. All right. Would your family be shocked or surprised if you converted to Catholicism? My mom's probably watching in the other room. I don't think so. I don't know. They ask me if that's happening, and we have conversations about it. I don't feel like this is something that's like about to happen or something, but if that were to happen, I'm pretty close with them, so I think they would be in the know. I don't think it would blindside them if that was to happen. Who would win in a bar fight, Arius or Martin Luther? I don't know. Martin Luther definitely would be in a bar, though. He used to compliment his wife that she was the best brewer in Wittenberg. I don't know. He's a pretty big dude, though. You love Father Mark Mary. Isn't he great? He's so cool. Really enjoyed him. What has been your favorite interview so far? I'm not allowed to answer that question, of course. I'll say anytime I've interviewed Eliza, that's safe. I don't know. The biggest milestone for me was interviewing Tim Mackey, someone who's been super impactful on me. And honestly, his channel probably has more subscribers than all the other interviews I've done combined, but there's been huge milestones along the way, like interviewing Matt Fradd. Remember landing the Trent Horn interview was super exciting. But they've all been super fun for different reasons. Honestly, I've really enjoyed them all. Some of my favorite have been like Father Seraphim Aldea has a special place in my heart, that interview, just the spiritual depth of it. But so many of them, they've all been super fun. I couldn't pick one. And there's so many people I didn't say that would also be on that list. So I don't want anyone to feel left out there. Can we see your mom? LOL. I don't care. She's probably watching. If she really wanted to make a cameo, she can. We'll see if that happens. But all right. Lord of Spirits podcast episode, The Priest Shall Make Atonement, deals with penal substitutionary atonement. Sweet. I'll have to watch that one. What's your view on purgatory? The simple answer would be I don't really have one. It's not something I've looked into that much. I could give the typical Protestant answer of it doesn't seem to be explicit in the Bible, which I think is fair to say. It doesn't seem explicit to me. I understand how you can make inferences to get there. I've listened to a podcast or two on it, but honestly, I'm not well enough educated on it. But I wouldn't say I have an active belief in purgatory. You're going to the conference at Steubenville. Cool. Didn't know there was one. Oh, is she coming in? I heard a door open. There's my mom.
Just kidding.
There she is. She says hello. But yeah, that's my mom. She's the best. Big fan of her. She watches every video I make. She's a patron on the channel. Super, super grateful. So yeah, everyone, that's my mom. Her name is Kelly. She's the best. Yes. Oh, interview Hank Hanegraaff. I want to interview Hank Hanegraaff. I can't find his contact, though I think his son follows me on Twitter. I need to follow up on that. Okay, Alexander. Oh my goodness. Another super chat. Having been the Southern Baptist and Pentecostal world, I caught myself caught up in the show and emotionalism versus God. Do you find the lack of reverences in churches to be a problem? I think it can be a problem, though I wouldn't say that like emotion should be dichotomized from God per se. I think that God gives us emotions. Emotions can be sanctified, and that we could experience God in an emotional way. Do I find the lack of reverence problematic, though? I do think it can be a problem, though I think sometimes, there's two things. God is both transcendent and immanent. And when we neglect one, if we say only emphasize the transcendence of God, that we act as though we have no meaningful access to God, and that God is not present, I think that can be a problem. But if we do the inverse and like it's, we only talk about God as like our best friend, little, our buddy or whatever, I think that's problematic too. Yeah. Okay. Man, another super chat. Love your content. What do you think of national flavored Christianity? I like how you said flavored, like mango flavored. Okay. American evangelical, Greek Orthodoxy. Does it divide the church? It can divide the church. It's also somewhat inevitable, right? So an evangelical in America could be called an American evangelical. But I mean, I think there are problems of nationalism, and maybe that's what you're getting at. So like, if we're more American than evangelical, or you're more Greek than Orthodox, and your Orthodoxy isn't informing your Greekness, or your evangelicalism isn't informing your Americanness, I think that's a problem. We want to make sure that the flow of influence is going from our faith to our culture, and not solely vice versa. It is a two-way stream, and our culture is going to inform how we express our faith, and I don't think that's a problem. But we don't want our culture to dominate our faith. We don't want our culture to define our faith. Yeah, I think that's how I would say that. That's how I did say that, so I guess it is how I would say it. Alrighty. Thank you guys so much. Super chat. Oh, I thought this all was going to be like in Arabic, and I was going to feel really bad. Okay, how important... Priests, pastors have no disciple. Hand blessing. Question about Orthodoxy. Just asked. The Holy Communion healed me from mental illness. I'm really sorry. I'm not sure I exactly follow your question. How important are priests? Depends on who you ask, I guess, for like what purpose. Pastors have no disciple. They should. Hand blessing. Oh, maybe you're getting at they don't have like apostolic succession, like they don't have the laying on of hands, like they don't have apostolic succession or valid ordination through the laying on of hands. Is that what you're asking? Just ask about the communion healed me from mental illness. I'm super stoked to hear that. That's wonderful. According to John, it's gotta be like what time where you are, midnight. But thanks for saying hi to my mom. If you guys haven't seen his channel, check out According to John. We did an interview there. I'm not going to claim it's his best video because I'm sure it's not, but it's a video you could start with on his channel and then watch other videos, which are probably better. Your mom has pretty hair, doesn't she? She's wonderful. Wonderful. Your mom is super supportive. I bet she has seen all your videos. She is. Hello, Austin's mom. You guys are so nice. Oh, that's another... Well, I won't get into that. Father Brendan at SJC. Oh, I think I've met him. Don't call him the man upstairs. Most serious I ever saw him. Yeah, it's probably not a great way to talk about God. BRB got to go convert to mango flavored Christianity. Mango. Pineapple on pizza. Eliza, I don't dislike it, but I have bad memories associated with it. The last time I ate pineapple flavored pizza was in Iquitos, Peru, the largest city in the world not accessible by road, fun fact. You have to go in by plane or by the Amazon River. And I got pineapple pizza, and I got sick the next day. I don't think it was from the pineapple pizza. I also got Nutella pizza. That's probably more likely to make you sick. But I actually think it was like a virus thing. But yeah, when I think of pineapple pizza, I think of eating it and going, oh no, I am getting sick and this is not good and I am in a far, far away place. So Father Casey would be an interesting guest. Father Casey Cole? Yeah, I'd like to have him on. Philitism has been declared heresy by the EO. Philitism. Like monophyllite? Okay, I'm just going to... Pineapple on pizza is a nuanced discussion, yes. Brother Augustine has an interesting comment. The deeper you get into Orthodoxy, the less you'll understand it, one of God's many holy paradoxes. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That the deeper you go, the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know, in some ways. Would I ever consider asking Bishop Barron to come on my channel? I have asked Bishop Barron to come on my channel, and I got a no. Sad face. Yeah, I invited him on to talk about his new book on Vatican II, but he said he was too busy. Well, he didn't say it. One of his many people that work for him said it. But maybe one day. Will Martin said, enjoy seeing you in the R&T live streams. Hope to see you on the show. Yeah, Michael invited me on the show back in like February, right after I had him on mine. He told me, send me a date and a topic, and I sat and I thought, and I was like, what would I talk about? I'm an expert in nothing, and it seems presumptuous to say, hey, let's go on your channel to talk about me. Like, I'm not that exciting. So I have to think more about like, what would I talk about? But maybe if he has something come on. Gospel simplicity, Chicago deep dish or New York skinny pizza. This is important and biblical. Yes, this is important. Well, I feel an obligation as someone who resides in Chicago to say that Chicago deep dish is better. But they're different, right? I mean, Chicago deep dish is like eating lasagna with a crust. New York style pizza is like pizza. And so it's apples and oranges, but Chicago's better than New York just as a city. So let's just say that. What made you change your view on John 6? Your original video seemed like you took a different view on John 6. Yeah, my first video on that it's so embarrassing that video did well because it's such a poor video. It's me waffling for 45 minutes, not knowing what to say because I was so utterly confused. But I feel like at the end of that video, though, I must not have been clear because where I felt at the end of the video was the most likely, the best interpretation, though I can see both sides, would be that there is some type of real presence in the Eucharist, though I'm not sure how to explain that. I think that's what I say at the end of that video, but I'm not sure I communicate it well. I'm pretty sure I don't communicate it well. So I'd say the only thing that's changed since then is I feel more strongly about it. Yeah. Although not just John 6, right? Like I think 1 Corinthians, is it 10:16? Is this cup that we bless not a participation in his blood? Is this bread that we break not a participation in his body? That idea of participation, I think, is really important and aligns with my soteriology, so it kind of works out. Bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom. Who says that? This stream has been going too long. I'm going to need to cut this soon. Will Martin. This is like a big question. Curious to have an outside opinion. Do you see real irreconcilable differences between Greek East and Latin West, or do you think they're ultimately polemical? Do I see irreconcilable differences? I want to say no, right? Because I'm committed to the belief that the church is one, that Christ desires unity in his church, and that desire is possible to come to fruition even in spite of the great challenges. Now, I know you can say, well, Orthodoxy is the true church, Catholicism is the true church, it's united in itself, ergo, the church is united. I think we can shoot for more than that. And so I'm very wary to say irreconcilable, but I also recognize that we don't want to be naive and downplay differences. So I would say I hold out hope. I'm not sure it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I would like to continue pressing on towards it in a way that would be God-honoring and faithful to the deposit of faith. Let's say it that way. What are my thoughts on John Wycliffe and Jan Hus? I don't think they should have been killed. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that was bad. Yes. Okay. Brother Augustine, I almost wrote my term paper on this. You're correct. How the hypostatic union informs our view of the sacramental presence of Christ and the Lord's Supper. And this is actually one of my questions for transubstantiation. I'm having on Brett Salkeld. I think I have his book right here. Brett Salkeld, Friday. And we're going to talk about transubstantiation. Sometimes to me, and this was Calvin's critique of transubstantiation, is that it flattens the sacrament, right? So that a sacrament, you have this sign and the visible sign and the invisible reality there. And sometimes it seems to flatten it and doesn't actually seem to follow that Chalcedonian model, and what you'd have, the true humanity and the true divinity, without confusion, change, division, or separation. Sometimes to me, that seems to me to be a good rubric to run our view of the Eucharist through. And I'm not sure how transubstantiation works on that model, but I'm a bit out of my league there, and I would like to ask people smarter than me, but I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. I should probably wrap this up soon. We'll give it we'll close at 8:30. Have I checked out Father Mike Schmidt's Bible in a Year podcast? I've heard of it. I haven't actually listened to it, but love that it's doing so well. I think that's wonderful. All right. Favorite Christian in history? Jesus? That's such a cop-out answer. Favorite Christian in history? I can't say. But I have a real interest in Bonaventure right now. I think I'm going to write my grad school application on Bonaventure. So I have to do a lot of research on him, which is why I have this book sitting right next to me, The Philosophy of St. Bonaventure by Etienne Gilson. But I wouldn't say he's my favorite Christian in history, but I find him interesting. Favorite book of the Bible? Which book has the most impact on your life right now? Probably the book of John is my favorite. Though I've done a lot of exegetical work in the book of Ruth, and it's a really underrated book. It's really good. Really enjoy the book of Ruth. Which book has the most impact on your life? Yeah, probably John. Do I plan to visit any Oriental Orthodox churches? Yes, I would like to. Honestly, the closest Oriental Orthodox church to me, which I had thought of visiting, was the same one that Matt from the 10-Minute Bible Hour visited. Love Matt Whitman's channel. And it just felt wrong to do a video on the same church that he did. But, we'll see. Ooh, a super sticker. How fun. Gia Francis says, pair character looking at himself in the mirror saying, thanks for... Oh... This is a description of the sticker. I'm going to sound really silly reading pair character looking at himself in the mirror saying, thanks for being you, with hearts popping out of his eyes. That's funny. That's how it pops up on my screen. Anyway, now that I've made myself look foolish, thank you for the super sticker. Really appreciate that. Cheryl Schalk loves Ruth. Yeah, me too. Okay. Do you ever get criticized for being willing to talk with Catholics and Orthodox? Yes, feel free to read my comments far enough and you will find people calling me a heretic and informing me of my eternal damnation. But for the most part, you'll see people being encouraging and nice, and that greatly outweighs it. But yeah, I get criticized for it. Such is life. You choose to do work on the internet. I just got a text from Eliza with a lot of exclamation points in it. I'm guessing that means she's not watching this stream. Should I be offended? I'm not offended. Now I'm really curious what she said. Any hoosers, what do you think of Bart Airman? Ah, yes, the Moody grad. Did you know that Bart Airman graduated from the Moody Bible Institute? True story, for his undergraduate, before going on to Wheaton, I believe, and then Princeton Theological School. Anyway, what do I think of him? I mean, I disagree with his conclusions. I don't know him personally. I have no qualms with him as an individual. I don't know him. I think he's asking good questions and perhaps giving bad answers to them. But I mean, as far as he's a real scholar. He put out a work with Bruce Metzger, the late Bruce Metzger, on textual criticism in the New Testament, and like he's done some serious scholarly work. I just don't agree with where he takes all of it, but I used his work for a paper. Oh my goodness, Alexander! Wow. Thank you. Have you received any blowback due to your open-mindedness to the Catholic Church? I'm in the South. It can get rough. Very similar to that other question. Yes, I have. Not a lot in person. Most of the time in person, I might get like a strange joke like Austin the Catholic is here or something. Or people just being confused. But on the internet, yeah, I've gotten blowback. Such is the internet. You could get blowback for giving food to the homeless on the internet. You blow back for anything on the internet. But yeah, I have. Would I ever interview an atheist? See, this is that tension again. I would be open to it. I've actually thought about doing like a spin-off that's just love across the lines and interviewing all types of people that disagree with each other and having that be the focus, both religious, political, etc., on different things. Because I enjoy these conversations. I grow so much from them. But I try to be a faithful steward of the channel, and I'm trying to navigate that, like I mentioned earlier with the interview that I'm sitting on. So maybe. I would love to, though, personally speaking. Like Dillahunty. I don't know. I would love to interview Cosmic Skeptic, Alex O'Connor. I find him to be very charitable, very bright. I would really enjoy him. Matt Dillahunty. Yeah, I mean, he's fine. We're just very different. Not that I can't interview people who are different than me. This comment wins. Can I leave this on screen the whole time? Austin is a tick. He ticks people off with his hair. If I had $1 for every time people told me to cut my hair. Wow, Hallie, you win. I almost feel like we should end on that. That's so wonderful. Oh, you had problems donating on the website. Oh, maybe I have a link that's broken. It could be. I'll look into that. Thanks for letting me know, Alexander. Okay. I really should fix that, though, because YouTube is much more greedy than my website is in terms of what they take from me. Okay. Well, on the note that, I'm just going to bring that up again, that I am a heretic because I tick people off with my hair, I think we're going to call it a night. I need to finish Latin homework. Fun. Thank you guys so much, though. Honestly, I've said it before. I'll say it again. It is such a privilege to do this. I'm so grateful for all of you. It is such a joy to get to be a part of this community with you all. You guys make this channel what it is. And we've hit 25,000 subscribers, which doesn't really compute in my mind. It's a crazy milestone. The things God has done with this channel have exceeded my wildest expectations, and I'll continue to use the image that I feel like I've handed him a few meager breadcrumbs, and he's multiplied it to feed thousands. And for that, I am so grateful, and know that this isn't about me. This isn't about the brand of gospel simplicity. This is about God doing something to bring a lot of different people together to discuss the mystery of who he is and the beauty of that. So I'm so grateful to get to be a part of it. Thank you all so much. I love you all. I pray for you all. I'm so grateful for all of you. I will see you all soon, and God bless.